Hey there, I am Barb Higgins, and this is 1,000 Tiny Steps. In this podcast, I share my stories of love, loss, triumph, and tragedy as I continue to retrace my steps and ponder what led to the death of my daughter Molly. By doing so, I hope to not only help myself, but to bring purpose and possibility to those who listen. If you are ready to laugh, cry, shake your head in disbelief, then tie, buckle, lace up, or slip on your shoes and join me as we begin our 1,000 Tiny Steps.
Hey everybody, Barb here, welcoming you back to 1,000 Tiny Steps. And I'm going to start today's episode by sharing a story. I was a junior in high school and it was my first cross-country season. And our races were at a course in White's Park, which was right near my house. And as a little girl growing up, I had watched Mr. Ludi's cross-country teams, boys teams, because it wasn't girls cross-country until I was in high school actually, run these races in the park. And it was mind-boggling to us little kids, all these boys running by and what was this and all this. And then I started running and joined cross-country. So I had been running for about 6 months and I thought I knew all of the good runners in the state. I didn't. So we were racing a bunch of teams from Manchester at White's Park. And this girl from Memorial takes off. And I'm like, who the heck is that? And all these people are yelling for her. So clearly she's well known in her realm, which makes sense. I mean, they're her teammates, but I could sense an undertone of wonder at who I was. And I'm thinking to myself, well, why wouldn't you know who I am? Because, I'm Barb Higgins. So we're running along. So I did end up beating Marty in this race. It was a home course advantage, I think. And I was totally stressed out about anyone beating me because nobody had. And I had no idea who she was. And so I finished the race. I go off to the side and Marty finishes the race and she was quite upset. And she's like, who the hell is that? Once I got to know Marty, the response was flawlessly, perfectly Marty. And so I went up to congratulate her and she was quasi-polite, but not overly talkative. And she walked away. The race ended and I was chatting away with Mr. Ludi after everyone had left. And I'm like, who was that anyway? And he hadn't paid much attention to the girls just because he was the boys coach. He's like, I don't know, I'll do some digging. And then I found out that she was this amazing runner that had been injured in the spring. So began my relationship with Marty Shea, my nemesis, my college roommate, my teammate, my friend. We lost track for a long time, back together. And obviously we're still friends today, 50 years later, or 45 years later. So hi, Marty, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Barb. I was the same as you. I was shocked. Who's this person running with me, being able to stay with me? Who the heck is she? And I definitely remember on the line, you were kind of fidgeting and up and down, typical Barb, hyper and just, yeah. I thought, oh, how annoying is this person? And then being shocked when I got beat. I remember that. I definitely remember that day and feeling where am I? Where is this White's Park place? And this girl. So it was very shocking.
So when I think back to our friendship in high school, so for all of you listening, Marty and I are like an old married couple. You hate each other and you love each other. All at the same time.
We had a very love-hate relationship.
Yeah.
For a long, long time, we had love-hate. But even the first set, you couldn't help but be like, I hate her, but I really like her. It's just a very weird thing because you were really funny. I have to admit, you were extremely funny. Part of me wanted to laugh and part of me was trying to be serious and mad. No, I got to ignore this person over here. So yeah, definitely a love-hate. Absolutely. And of course, we're both so competitive. We want to win.
Right.
You want to win. That's the bottom line. You like the person, but no way, man. I can't like the person because I got to beat them. I remember distinctly, and you'll remember this. It was state meet. Kathy was our big competition, and we totally ganged up together. Even though we were on separate teams, we're like, okay, we got to beat her. Because we were so embarrassed that a young 8th grader, a complete complete anomaly, just all of a sudden was beating us in cross country. Who is this person?
Yes.
And so you and I kind of were like, all right, we're going to train really hard this winter. We're going to beat her. We both made up our minds.
It unified us a lot.
It did unify us. Another big thing that really unified us, and this is going to sound crazy to you, but you met me. I remember you saying to me, hey, do you want me to French braid your hair before the race? And I was like, yeah, sure. What's that? And you brought me under the bleachers and you French braided my hair. And it was beautiful. I remember, I loved it. I was like, wow. And my brother, after the race, said, your hair looks incredible like that. Now, my brother's not someone who gives out compliments easy. He goes, you should have her do every week. And so I asked you, would you do it next week? You're like, sure. Yeah. And so that was like, and I thought, wow, she's so nice to do this. Like she's meeting me early to freaking braid my hair. Like,
Yeah, my rival. Well, it was
yeah,
track, so we had different
it
events,
was
but
track,
still.
but still, you were
Yeah.
on another team. I mean, you had things to worry about. You had all sorts of events you were doing, and you're taking time out to come French braid my hair under the bleachers. So
Yeah.
that day, I really was like, okay, she's a really good person.
So in Marty's and my ever back and forth relationship, I was recruited to BU because Mr. Ludi, my coach, knew the athletic director, John Simpson. So in late March, early April, I heard that Joni Benoit was going to be the coach at BU, and Mr. Ludi arranged a visit for me. I had applied to Brown University and I had a mimeograph. They didn't have really photocopies then, but I had a copy of my application. So I brought it with me because I had not applied to BU. And so I went down with my mother. We drove down to BU and I met with David Hemry, Olympic gold, silver, and bronze medalist. He was the head coach at the time. And I said, I haven't applied here, but here's my application to Brown. So I handed it to him and to this old man named Benny Benedict, who was like the student liaison for the athletes. And off they go with my Brown application. And they come back and say, you're accepted to BU and we'll give you X amount of scholarship money and we'll match it with X amount of academic money. So in a day, I had applied to, been accepted, and been granted basically a full scholarship to BU to run for Joni. And it was the first year that the NCAA recognized female athletes. And so I share this with you, with Marty. The spring goes along and this and that. And David Hemry comes up and watches. And they had a couple of spots left. And you, I think, were going to head off to UNH. You were just going to go to UNH.
Well, what happened was, no, actually, I had a full scholarship to University of California, Berkeley. But my dad did not want me to go there because he said it was too far away.
Oh,
and he said, you're not going to like it. You're not going to like it. And I applied anyway against his wishes. He didn't know. And I was so nervous filling out the application that it came back. And so then Vern Gambetto's calling me like, hey, where's your application? I need your application. You have a full ride. What are you doing? And I said, when my dad came back to him, he came into my room and he was in tears. And he said, I can't believe you would do this behind my back. I can't believe you already talked about this. I don't want you going there. It's too far. You're someone who's not been away from home. And I don't feel good about this. And I said, okay, Dad, I won't go. Meanwhile, I had applied at UNH. Nancy Kruger had said that I was going to get a scholarship there for running. And then at the last minute, she called me and said, and now we're talking like end of May.
Right.
And so I've already turned down Berkeley. I've already turned down BU. Joan Benoit had called me in February and wanted me to apply and wanted me to go there. And I had said, I didn't know anything about BU. I was like, I don't really want to go there. No, I didn't understand. UNH calls me, says they don't have money for me. So I said, guess what? I won't say what I said to her at the time, but it wasn't so nice.
Yeah.
And I decided that under no circumstances was I going to UNH.
Right. Right.
I have no college to go to.
So David Hemry comes up to watch me in the New Englands, and he watches me run the mile, and then he watches me run the 800. And then he comes up to me after the 800 and before the 3200, which you were running, and you were warming up. And he said, do you know Marty? I'm like, yes. Would you like to meet her? Because back then he couldn't approach you. I could bring you to him, but the recruiting was just different back then. And he wasn't really allowed to like seek you out. So I'm like, oh my God, yes. So he said, let her race. I think it was after your race. And I'm like, Marty, come here. I want you to meet David Hemry. Yep. And so there's the conversation. And I remember 2 days later, my phone ringing. And of course, it's a wall phone in my kitchen. And I walk into the living room and I'm on the phone looking into the living room mirror. And you're like, guess what? I'm going to BU. so now,
oh God.
We're teammates.
Yeah, well, let me just back up on that. So I want you to know this, and I think I've told you this before, but I don't know if you've ever really heard it.
Yeah.
Never would have gone to BU if it wasn't for you. Never, ever, ever would I have gone to BU because I would have been like, what the heck is BU? Like, I can't go there. But because you were going there, you gave me the confidence, and I thank you for that profusely. Profusely. I never would have gone there, Barb, because I wouldn't have thought about going to the city, to be honest, like city school. But you kept talking to me about it, and you had even said to me, why aren't you going to go to BU? I don't know. But then
that's right. I remember that.
After that happened, I thought, well, Barb's going there. And I always go back to this. My dad always said, she's really smart. She's brilliant. And, if she's doing it, it's a good thing. So, so you were a huge influence in that. And not only were a huge influence in that for you to get me to BU, once I was there, I never would have gotten my graduate degree if it wasn't for you. Not in a million years.
Really?
Never. You don't remember all this stuff, but you came home one day and I never would have had my B&G job. And I never would have, there's so many ways you've influenced my life in such positive ways. Oh my God. You came home one day and said, I'm getting my graduate degree next year. And I said, really? How are you doing that? And you said, it's a 1-year program for education. You should do it too. And I said, really? And you're like, why not? And I said, it's only 1 year. And you're like, it's 1 year. You can do it in 1 year.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm so sick of school. And you said to me, if you don't do it now, you'll never do it. And I said, you're right. So I went back and basically begged Bruce for a 5th year because I was not running well at all. I was so done with college. I was trying to figure out my life. I was so stressed out. Like, where am I going to work next year? How am I going to pay my bills? Very different from now where kids go home, they move home or whatever. We didn't do that.
No, that wasn't an option for us, nor did we want to. Like, I didn't want to go home.
No, exactly. We didn't want to. Our parents probably wanted us to, but we didn't want to. You're so right.
Yeah.
We just thought we're independent. We can't go home. So I went that day and talked to Bruce. And I remember Bruce saying, well, you really haven't been running well. I said, no, I haven't. But let me ask you something. Who's coming next year? Is there anyone better than me? And he said, no. And I said, then why not just give it to me? And he said, you know what? You're right. Why not? I did apologize to him before he passed away that, I really did not hold true to my end of the bargain. So I apologized. And he was like, oh my God. He didn't care, but I think he knew, but it was important to me to tell him I was sorry.
That was overwhelming. Manchester's a bit bigger than Concord, but it's still New Hampshire. It's still a hard rock radio station was Aerosmith. And you go to Boston, it was all that new punk rock and all this new music. And you get on the subway and I remember just being blown away by the culture shock and the freedom. Like I thought like you could stay out all night. Nobody was going to come get you. Like it was just it was so different. Like I wasn't ready for all of that. We went to a track meet the summer before our senior year, the Kendall Women's Classic, and it was at BU. And I remember we were sitting on this little teeny piece of grass. And right there behind the track, behind the wall of the stadium is the Mass Pike, this car zooming by. And we were just trashing who'd want to go to college here? Oh, look, our track's next to the highway. Like we were just trashing that. And I had forgotten all about it. And then one day we're out there doing a track workout or something. I'm like, oh my God, Marty, we sat right here and trashed this place. Yeah. Another tie-in to our experience that came to my mind later is years ago, I read a book called The Silence of Great Distance. I don't know if you've ever read it. It's incredible. And it's all about really Wisconsin, Susie Favor Hamilton and how she got into all the sex trade and talking about the large number of female runners who were sexually abused as children or abused. Mm-hmm. And I read the book, riveted, because I was sexually abused as a child. And being around elite athletes and all that, it's incredibly common for super elite athletes, particularly female athletes, particularly female endurance athletes, to get into it as a means of reconciling the whole trauma response with your body. And like, I know for me, I didn't like my body at all until I started running. And then I'm like, wow, like how lucky am I to have this body? Like it was that. Yeah. So I read that book and then it reminded me of our first day of college, which was in a white van driving down the Cape to go to our cross country camp. And all of us start talking about our crazy high school times. And there were like 5 of us that had relationships with our coaches. And we all started talking about it. I think back now at how troubling that is. And it was a big joke to us. Troubling.
Versus me, who had the most stellar, like amazing man, Mr. Glantz.
Yeah.
But you did have Mr. Ludi for one.
Yes. Mr. Ludi was not stupid. And he sort of caught on to a lot of what was going on. These things get out. And my senior year, he took over my training. Wow. He says, I'm your coach now. And I remember that my cross country coach, who was a woman, she wasn't too happy about it, but Mr. Ludi saw how poorly trained I was. The coach that I was involved with, I call him Science Guy in the podcast. I've told the whole story. He wanted me to do winter track and we'd be together all the time. And Coach Ludi said, no, you're going to just do base building. And I remember just the connections and some of those first distance runs with other members of the team and just finding out how different we all were, but how similar we all were, and how much we all really loved running. Now here we were at this big giant university. Like, how did we get here? So another thing that you and I share is you were BU's first female cross country All-American, and I was BU's first female track All-American for NCAA. I think back to our first race at White's Park when who the hell is that? And, and we're just these little dorky high school girls. And we would go on to do what I now see as a pretty fucking amazing thing.
Yeah, exactly.
There was a whole bunch of us recruited. You and I got that honor. Right. I just think about not even really knowing what it meant other than it felt cool to say it, Yeah. So we made it through college. Now, Marty and I did a lot of things together. We worked at buildings and grounds together, mowing lawns and
Right.
killing rats with
That was
shovels.
you
And
again. That was you again, influencing me. And I loved that job. I think I loved that job more than you, but
you did love it more than me, I will say.
I loved it. I loved the whole cutting the lawns and the whole bit. And I tried to do all the lawns in one day and we'd get in trouble because we were working too fast and we were supposed to space them out over the course of a week. And I could do it in like a day. I would say to you, like, hey, I'm going to go for a run because I've cut all my lawns. And you were like, no, you're going to get caught. And I said, no, I'm not going to get caught. Of course I'm not going to get caught. Yeah, I got caught.
Yeah.
And you're like, I told you.
Yeah. We finished college and I stick around the Boston. Well, we both do Nike Boston for a couple of years. That's right.
Yes.
One thing that I was really good at, which is not a good thing to be good at, is I could really generate and create drama in my life. And a lot of it came from the abuse in my background. I wasn't used to just stability. So if things got too stable, that felt alarming to me. So in all of my therapy now, I know that somebody like me who would be, so I'd be abused and then months would go by and it wouldn't happen. I'd recover from it and I'd be less vigilant. And then finally everything would feel normal and I'd be comfortable and then it would happen again. So of course my 10-year-old brain and my 11-year-old brain thought, okay, it's my fault. I got comfortable. It's my fault. I can't get comfortable. So when you train yourself to be vigilant and not get comfortable, then you get in a relationship like my college boyfriend, David, who was the sweetest guy. So when it got too comfortable, that to me is panic mode. So I need to immediately find something that will keep it uncomfortable. So my pattern was to find another boyfriend or someone else to, it was this vicious, it took me a long time to really figure that out, years and years to figure it out. And yeah, it's just craziness. But I think back to our Nike Boston years and, our so much of the drama around our coach and all the traveling and well, for me, the partying and the alcohol. You were always really good about not getting involved in drugs and alcohol and that sort of thing. That was an easy avenue for me.
Well, for me, it was more like, I could do it when I was injured. I could have fun with it. But I think you had more of an issue with it because it was almost like a lifestyle at some point because of all your trauma. But it was all trauma. And I wasn't smart enough to know then to understand, because I don't know if you remember this, but we were at LA in the Olympic dorms to be before the Olympics in 1981. They were building the dorms and they put us in there for nationals.
That's right.
We were on the top bunk and I was on the bottom bunk. And you started to share with me your childhood. And I didn't know how to respond to that. I was in shock. I was in complete shock because our childhoods were so different. I had the idyllic, all-American, mom's at home, dad's at work, godparents that lived next door. I had this whole village of people that were so supportive. I mean, geez, I couldn't have had a more Norman Rockwell type childhood. And I'm hearing your childhood and I'm just like, what do I say to this girl?
Yeah.
How do I respond to this? I don't know what to say. And I remember being very shell-shocked. In fact, when I got home, I told my parents, I said, this is so upsetting. I have to share this with you because I'm so upset. What do I do? And they didn't know what to do. They were just like, well, it's Barb's past and she seems to be okay now.
Yeah.
Who knew?
Yeah.
No one knew how to deal with it. So how in the world would you know how to deal with it?
Right.
Like, no way.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
And it did. It completely messed up your life. There's no question about it.
Yeah.
No question about it. But it's amazing everything you've accomplished despite that.
Yeah.
I mean, how you ran so well. You're all-American. You get a scholarship to BU. Like you rose above it. Probably pushed a lot of those emotions down for a long, long time until finally you couldn't anymore.
It's funny because now in my life now where I'm trying to help other mothers that have lost children, I know that when I look back on every traumatic thing that's ever happened to me in my life from like college on, always I seek to find something to do that's movement. So running stayed in my life for a long time until and coaching. And so we graduate from college and then we really separate. Like I stayed down in the Boston area for another couple of years, but I was really struggling. I was drinking a lot. I was actually starting to do a lot of other drugs at that time. My relationship with David was struggling. Then I moved to Somerville with a friend of mine, Brenda. Like I lived in Needham. I was very unstable. I was your classic 23, 24-year-old who was out of college, but not ready to be an adult. I was just in that phase. You went to Marblehead right away, didn't you?
Right away. I moved. Yep. I moved to Marblehead and was engaged to Gary and we got married like a year later.
Yeah. I lost contact with everybody then because everyone sort of did that. A lot of our teammates got.
Not that it was a good idea. It was not a good idea. Obviously, we were too young. I was too young, but whatever. That's what I did.
Yeah. So you were married and living in Marblehead, and you started a fitness company, yes?
Yes. Yep. I started a personal fitness training company, Select Fitness.
And that was when personal training was brand new.
It was brand new.
Yeah.
Yeah. I read an article in the New York Times about this guy that was doing it. And I thought, wow, that's totally what I'm doing anyway. Remember, I worked in the weight room at BU. So I was like, okay, great. And started doing that. But I did teach school right out of college. I had a 1-year contract at a school on Beacon Hill. And I did that for a year and then just really was like, I'm so sick of being in school. Like, I just felt like I went to school and now I'm back in school. It was like, I need to get out of school. You know what I mean? So that's why I started.
You and I parted ways for a while. We just were in separate strands, which is sometimes friendships need a break. So you start an incredible personal fitness training business. And I know from reading reviews of your services and social media and all that you also have a pretty incredible following of people that you've helped and that love you and that swear by your life-changing advice and exercising, all the stuff you've done. It. We've both taken what we love and turned it around to give back to other people. Yeah.
Right.
So tell me about getting out of running and then finding cycling, because what you all may not know is Marty is a kick-ass cyclist. Entered the cycling world until you were
40s. So you went up to New Hampshire. I stayed in Boston. And after college, I was running. I was so sick of being on a strict regime type thing where, I was so like focused on running. And so I was running to be fit. And then Michelle Hallett and Freddie Braz lived in Peabody and they started running for Nike Boston. And somehow I met up with them at some point and they said, you should run for Nike Boston. So I went to a party at the Nike store in Wellesley. And then Sev was there and I approached him and said, can I run for Nike Boston? Yes, you can run for Nike Boston. So then I was on that. And that Sev, I will give him credit. He really got the best out of me, really got me to run my fastest times and really hated the track. As you know, I was like, oh, and I wanted to run the marathon. And he said, well, if you want to run the marathon, and I think you should be a marathoner, but you need to be able to run 4 10Ks under 33 minutes. You got to be right around 33. If you want to run a good, you just have to do it or it's not worth it. And I'm like, oh. And at the time I was running like 34 minutes for a 10K. So he said, we got to get you under 33. And after I did that, he said, you're ready for the marathon. So then I was training for the marathon, doing great, like really doing well. And my foot started hurting and I ended up having to have foot surgery. And after that, I had a sesamoid bone taken out of my bottom of my foot. And after that, I came back from that and I'm running really well again. Guess what? It starts hurting in the same place again. I'm like, how can that be? There's nothing there. And I'm like, it's like phantom pain, and the bone's gone. And I just was like, I'm done. I'm so done with this. I'm just done. Yeah. So mentally and truthfully, I probably could have come back from that, but I just had it. I was like, I don't need this anymore. Like, I can't keep starting over. And I had just turned 30 and I felt like, you know what? I'm 30. I didn't make a team. The hell with it. I'm done. I'm just going to focus on my personal fitness training business. That's it. I'm just going to be a responsible adult and do that. So that's kind of when I stopped running, early 30s, which is a shame because if I had just like realized that I'm not in the twilight of my career, I could have done it and done really well, but I thought I was. So I stopped running. I mean, I didn't stop running. I stopped racing, but I kept training and realized in my early 30s, like, I feel like I'm stronger than I've ever been before. And I wasn't imagining it, because you are. And I took up cycling. At that point, I started to just do recreational cycling. Like I got a road bike and I got a mountain bike and I started doing all that. I started snowboarding. I started windsurfing. I started doing all the sports I hadn't done because I was a runner and didn't want to get hurt. And then when I turned 40, my knee started hurting, like literally. And I remember Bob 70 saying this to me. He goes, right around 40, things start to act up, but, and sure enough, at 40, I woke up day of my birthday, walked downstairs and was like, my knee hurts. And that was the beginning of a really bad time for me because it ended up being like articular cartilage damage and I had surgery and all that. And then I could no longer run the same. So that's when I started to get into cycling. Right. And I did it for a couple of years. And then I was always showing up on this Tuesday night ride in Marblehead. And the guys were like, wow, you should race. Because I could stay with the guys who were like category 1 racers. And they're like, oh my God, like, why aren't you racing? I'm like, no, I've already done that. I've already raced. I'm going to forget it, meaning like running and all that. And finally, I decided to do a hill climb, Mount Washington, and won and loved it. And was like, okay, I'm hooked. And that was it. I started doing all these hill climbs, which then led to time trialing, which then led to stage racing. And I just had a ball for like almost 10 years, 8 years, something like that. Yeah. Then got tired of doing that. Said, okay, I've done enough of that. and got into downhill mountain biking,
So,
which I do now.
so I want to talk about another piece of us, you and me, but also just us. So I remember reconnecting with you through Facebook. It was social media. Facebook didn't exist for us. So when you left your college friends back then, you left them. There was no way to know how everyone was. You didn't have a way to find their address and what happened unless you ran into someone that knew them. So I started looking for people. And so I found you and I found all the things that all of our teammates had done. That was an incredible time. And then you were a huge piece of, so I had a really traumatic job loss because I got sort of sucked into a very dysfunctional family. And then I had this long-term on again, off again relationship with Roy, who lived in Marblehead. Yes. So I know when I was going through all of that, you were incredibly, incredibly non-judgmental and incredibly helpful to me. Like you just, all right, here's where you're at. Let's just deal with it. Let's, what do you think? How do you feel? Like I remember we had a BU reunion thing and I was following you home. We were driving to Marblehead after the BU reunion and we were talking on the phone. When I think back to our many connections and the variety of ways that they manifest, in many ways, you and I couldn't be more different. But in other ways, we're like, connected.
Totally.
Like, that's what I mean. An old married couple, like.
Yeah, no. I remember we used to talk about this in college, and we'd said someday we're going to be at a nursing home in New Hampshire. Like, hey, Barb, how you doing?
With our chin hairs. Yeah. So then fast forward a bit more to our college coach, Bruce Lehane. So Bruce shows up. We have Joni and David Hemry and all of that for 2 years and Sev. And then Sev leaves and then Joni leaves and then David Hemry retires. And so our junior year is a whole upheaval. Kevin Coyne, then Pete Shooter, Jan Samuelson, and Bruce. So Bruce shows up. So I remember our first Cape Cod with Bruce, and he took us all to the drive-in to see Risky Business.
Yes.
And it was, and we were all just like, oh my God, like, who is this guy and all this? And he was like the salve on an open wound is how I feel about him and that whole dysfunctional program. He was just so calming. Yeah.
And such a good man. Such an incredible person. Just a good heart, a good soul. He was going through a lot then too, but you never would have known it,
No. Oh, I know.
Trying to figure out his life. And then he's got all these crazy girls like to deal with.
Yeah, no kidding. And then falling in love with Leslie and, finding his soulmate.
Love that story.
Yeah, me too. So all of that happens. And so then the years go by and then social media and we all sort of start to reconnect. And then we find out that Bruce has ALS and that he's likely not going to live very long. And so we all try to get together. And our plan is to get together in Boston and go see Bruce together, like all of us.
Correct.
But he dies about a month before we had it all planned and then he passed away. And so, but we still got together. We still met. You got that apartment. And my favorite memory is we left to go for a walk thinking we'd come back and we didn't. We walked all day and all night.
Yes.
Just
right. We did. We
went everywhere. Right. And we had our jackets on and we went into Case Athletic, the new athletic center. The girl behind the desk was like, whoa, you guys were here. Like all of a sudden I realized like we're the old ladies now. We're like the Golden Girls, like.
Right. I know.
We need our short blue haircut. It was just such an eye-opening. Like they looked at us like the OGs, like, wow.
Right.
Yeah. So we have had amazing reconnections that way. First ever full scholarship athletes for NCAA collegiate running. First ever NCAA All-Americans for BU. Then we leave college. We both start careers that have had tons of ups and downs, but for the most part, positive. We both have marriages that don't work. And then we have second marriages. That work. Mine's a little rockier than yours, but we're still together. So there it is. And then, so I get big into CrossFit, you get big into cycling and then leading these cycling tours. So tell me about that a little bit.
My husband, Joe, has a company called Destination Cycling. And he started this company like almost 40 years ago. And he takes people on cycling vacations to Europe, mostly Spain and Italy and France. And he's been doing that forever. And I've gone on many of those excursions and they're just so well done. Like he has an incredible staff. He works so hard to make everything so smooth for the people. Again, it's not my company. It's my husband, Joe's company, Joe Tunnan. But I have helped out on some of those trips. I've probably been to Europe now, I would say, 20 times, a lot.
That's awesome.
Spent weeks at a time over there. And that's how I really did a lot of my training for Mount Washington and all my cycling races was I was over there. And I mean, the mountains are just incredible. As you know, the Alps and the Pyrenees, and it's lots of fun.
Here we are in our 60s. And so weird. So you split your time, sometimes in the Southwest, sometimes in the Northeast. And is that just to have good weather? Like just to have a
Yeah,
change of
that's the
pace?
main reason. Absolutely. I got to a point, it was my 50th birthday, and I had done a lot of traveling, because of running, and been to quite a few places in the country. And one of them one year, you remember Junior, Paul McGovern?
Yes.
Okay, so Junior one year was running a race out here in Phoenix, and he invited me to go. I don't know why. I was really fit at the time because I was training with him. We used to do our 20-mile runs together when I was in my marathon mode. And he said, you're so fit. Why don't you come to the race I'm doing? And I said, okay. So out we go. We go out we were both running for Nike Boston, and we both won our race. It was in Tempe, Arizona, which is just outside of Phoenix. I just remember it was so different then. It was like Arizona was like uncharted. There was like hardly any people living here. And this is like back in the mid 80s now.
Yeah.
We both had a great time. And I just always remembered how much I loved Arizona and the weather being so beautiful. And it was in February. The race was in February. So when I was turning 50, Joe and I had been going to Aruba. We had bought this little condo there, little cheap condo, but it was good enough. We could go there to get away, from the cold, and we could go windsurfing, ride our bikes and stuff. And the biking was getting really dangerous there. I was like, because more and more people were going there.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know about riding here. It's kind of dangerous, like not so good. We were both really into cycling at that point. So then when I was turning 50, he said, where do you want to go? And I said, I want to go to Arizona. And he said, oh, really? I'm like, yeah, someplace different. Let's go to Arizona. I remember it. It was beautiful. It's warm there. Like, let's just go there. And I wanted to go away for a month because January is my birthday and it's freezing in New England. So we planned it and we came out to, Joe chose Tucson. I didn't know anything about Tucson. He chose Tucson. He must have done some research and realized it was a really good cycling community, and Mount Lemon's here and all that. So chose Tucson. We came out, we were like, we should sell our little condo and buy one out here because we're done with Aruba.
Yeah, right.
That's exactly what we did. But we started renting a house out here first to see how we liked it. And, we would come out for like a month, and then the next year we came out for 6 weeks. Then it was 2 months. And I was still running my business. I was very much involved with Select Fitness, and I have people working for me. They were getting ticked off because I was gone for so long. Every year was becoming more and more. Finally, we went away for like 3 months, and they're all ready to quit. They're so mad at me. We decided that, we're going to buy a house out here. And that's what we ended up doing. I don't work as much as I used to. I'm semi-retired. I work when I go back to New England. My clients are all about 10 years older than me now, so it works out perfectly because a lot of them go away in the wintertime.
This time of year, I do a lot in researching for podcast episodes and just wanting to make sure I'm not sounding stupid. I've done a ton of just re-educating myself on development. And one of my favorite child development specialists or just human development is Eric Erickson. And he has all the different stages of development. And when you get into the later stage of life, late 50s, 60s, 70s, it's a lot of reflection. Sometimes it's regret. Sometimes it's anxiety. Sometimes it's feeling homesick because you realize that you're not in the part of life anymore where you're constantly looking forward and planning what's next.
Right.
Now you're sort of circling the airport a little bit, like slowing down.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, it's just different. And it gives all this time to reflect. And I look at a lot of my friends whose children are grown. Now I have a 4-year-old and they're retiring and all this and really entering this last phase of life. It gives me great anxiety. I'm not ready to be in my last phase of life. And then I look at like your parents, for example, or Coach Ludi. Mr. Ludi lived until he was 98. So I'm 62. Wow. So that's 36 years. All right. Well, 36 years ago, I was in my 20s. So then I realized, okay, I'm not really close to dying at all. Like if you look at it, you know what I mean? Like, there's so many constructs, social constructs that come up with how you're supposed to feel about yourself and what you're supposed to do next. So part of my life is still like, what do I do next? And what's my next challenge? So where are you at?
I had a client and she once said to me, you always have to reinvent yourself. We were talking about Madonna and how Madonna always kept reinventing herself as an artist, And I remember this person saying that to me and I thought, wow, I'm going to put that in the back of my mind and remember that. When I stopped running, I realized that so much of my identity was tied into running, as all of us, because we started so young. We started in high school. It was such a big part of who we are, and I finally realized that, like, hey, I can't run. My knee is going to fall off and I will have a knee replacement in a year if I keep doing this. So I can't do this anymore. So I had to come up with something else to reinvent myself. And I mean, I'm such an athlete. It's so ingrained in me. I think if I didn't have sports, that would be a real issue for me.
Yeah.
But guess what? There's always another sport to be played, I mean, maybe it ends up being croquet someday. I don't know. Maybe I'll be in a wheelchair and be going to croquet tournaments. I don't know. Yeah. But there'll always be something in my mind, whether with my arms or with my legs or with my core, there'll be something I can do.
Yeah.
And so for me, the transition was really natural with cycling. I always had a bike growing up, and it just was like, okay, so if I ride a bike, it's going to take my knee a lot longer to wear out. So I'll just do that. And then, of course, my competitive nature started to rear its ugly head,
Yeah.
and I had to start competing. But, now I'm in this phase where I really love the mountain biking. Was great because I felt like I reached the most I could do in cycling. And that was it. Like I knew in 2012, like I won everything I entered, everything, whether it was a stage race, whether it was a time trial, I just won. And after that, I felt like I can't ever do that again.
Right.
There's no way I can do, I'm 49 years old, like be real. And I'm happy about that because I don't ever want to go uphill again.
Yeah. No.
So
Yeah.
uphill races. Good Lord. So kind of, I wanted to get into something else. And the mountain biking in Arizona is so incredible. It's like, there's so many trails here. There's so many great places to go.
Yeah.
And I had been in mountain biking before, in my 30s, with my old boyfriend. And he took me like all over the country. We went to Moab. We went out here to Arizona. So when I stopped road biking, because I didn't want to do it when I was road biking, because again, I was focused on competing, didn't want to get hurt. I took up mountain biking again. But unbeknownst to me, I was a terrible mountain biker. I didn't know what I was doing. I was good, but I was fit, and I could maneuver things, but like was really doing a lot of things wrong. And when I got out here, the girls out here are just amazing. There's so many girls that are so good.
Yeah.
And there was a particular person, one of my friends, her name is Kimber, and she introduced me to this Tara Alcantara, who's a cycling coach out here. And I asked Tara if she would give me some mountain bike lessons. And she said, yeah, sure. Now I'm thinking I'm going to get a cross country lesson, learn how to do cross country mountain biking, which is a lot mellower than downhill. All right.
Yeah.
She's a downhill racer. So she's like, okay, let's go. And so first lesson is like, I'm going down this thing called prison camp. And I'm like, I don't know how to do this. And she's like, well, let me just go over a few things. And she teaches me little by little, how to one finger braking and all these things that I never knew of, getting down low, getting the elbows up. I'm like, huh, what? I never did any of this. And it was all so new and so different. And I'm like, really? Like, she taught me so much in a span of like 4 or 5 lessons. And I got more confident and really started to love it because now it's fun, right? Now it's like, okay, I know how not to kill myself. And it was something I had never done. I have no comparison. There's a social app called Strava. I'm sure you've heard of it, right?
Yeah.
Strava. So on Strava, you can get, QOMs, Queen of the Mountains and all that. So here comes the competitive nature again. So here I am. First, I'm doing these downhill segments out here that are really, really gnarly. Like, 165th out of 2,022 people. And now it's like, okay, I'm like 16th out of 2,200. And the ones that are ahead of me are like professional mountain bike racers.
Right.
So I'm feeling really good about myself, I didn't do it when I was 20, 30,
That's
40,
right. So it takes away the feeling. I didn't start CrossFit until my late 40s, but there's this big CrossFit Open. So it's like you do the workouts in your gym and you submit your scores. Somebody judges you and makes sure that you don't cheat and all that. There were like 2,500 women in my age group worldwide, like 60 to 64.
Wow.
So I was like 500th in one workout. And I'm like, okay, 500 out of 2,500. That's not bad. There's 2,000 people behind me. And then the next one, 500th. And then the last one was like an endurance workout with a ton of rowing. I got 50th out of like 2,500. I'm like, yeah. So granted, they're all old ladies like me, but still, it's the same thing though. It's that twisted
same thing.
Yeah.
Well, it's fun. You want to see how good you could be at something,
Yeah, exactly.
And, I mean, and I think it's just ingrained in us. I don't think that ever goes away. It hasn't gone away. So when you ask me, like, how do I feel about the next segment of my life? I mountain bike with guys that are 68 and 70 years old, and they're amazing. They're amazing athletes. I'm like, I don't have to worry about that for a while. I know I can do it for another 8 years at least, And then when the time comes, I'll know. I mean, I think that your reflexes do diminish, and in a sport like mountain biking, you need to have good reaction time. And if that starts to diminish and I notice it and I'm aware of it, then I would do lesser difficult trails, what I mean? I would just, let's just go and do like a little cross country over here or something like that. So I'm not sure what it's going to be because I never know. I had no idea I was going to become a cyclist. I had no idea I was going to go into downhill mountain biking. I had no idea I was going to play golf.
Right.
So something will come up for me. I don't worry about that stuff.
That's wonderful.
Here's my take on old age. So, we don't have children. I have family, obviously, but I don't have anybody I'm really responsible for other than my dog. All right. So if someone gave me a contract, and you're going to think this is awful, but if someone gave me a contract and they said, you can live till 80 and then you're going to have perfect health between now and then. You don't have to do anything. You just sign on this dotted line. And, at 80, you're going to just fall asleep and never wake up. painless, whatever, I would sign the contract. I got to be honest, because I would be guaranteed the next, 18 years
would be
total
amazing.
bliss.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think that's all. That's like
maybe
what I
that
said
sounds
to my
horrible.
friend Barb when they were carting my friend Brian off in the ambulance. I hope I get hit by a bus. I want to have a great last day. Yeah, a lot of my desire to stay alive obviously is around Gracie and Jack. I was 57 when I had Jack. So if I lived to 97, he'd be 40 years old. A lot of people lose their parents.
Exactly.
That's not a big deal.
Yes.
And when I look at my
Right.
family and the genetics of my family, most of my relatives lived into their 90s. And I would say
That's incredible.
of them, most of them were completely fine. Yes, their bodies
That's
began
great.
to fail, but
Right. As long as you have your mind, that's the biggest thing. You got to have your mind.
yes,
You gotta
yes,
have
yes,
your
yes,
mind.
yes.
My parents are 95 and 93.
Yeah.
They both have their minds. They're fully
Yeah.
sharp,
Yeah.
and yeah, their bodies are failing, no question about it, but they have their mind.
Yeah.
I wanted to say this, I really do, and I want the listeners out there to know how many people that you have helped, and it really me so much on so many levels, and you probably never knew this, but on so many levels, like, you would give me advice in college when I had boyfriends, like, this is what you do, da, 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 da. Like, you were almost like a big sister teammate. Like, I don't even know how to define you. It's a really kind of very complex relationship we have.
Yes, it is.
On many layers.
Yep.
But you're somebody, even a few years ago, I would call you when I was sick, like, Barb, what do I do? I have these sinus infections. I'm going out of my mind. And you would always give me great advice, try this, do this, so you're someone that I really value and appreciate and love. And you really did have a huge effect on my life. Huge. And I'm not just saying that.
That goes both ways, because I look at you as someone that is utterly unafraid. I would be so afraid before races that I would vomit, like so nervous just about losing or about how much it's going to hurt. Like fear was such a driving force for me. And I remember you telling me once how you would shadow box your competition in the mirror. Like there's Barb. Yeah, I'm going to kick your ass. Woo, woo. And that you embraced the pain of the race. Like, no, I look forward to it. See if you can hurt as much as me. And you live your life that way too, Marty. You really do. You make decisions and you go for it in a way that a lot of people don't, me included. Your calming effect on me was just watching you, like watching you interact, watching you race, watching how you process good races and bad races, like so different than me, and I think you do that in your life as well. I'm going to be the first personal trainer in Marblehead. Boom. Here you are.
Yep. Comes from, though, in all fairness, that comes from having a very stable childhood, which you did not have that advantage. So I had a huge advantage going into adulthood that you had.
I've always looked for external structure to keep me where I need to be. And it's one of the hardest things in my life now is everything I'm doing is my own. I could be making a ton of money on this podcast and I'm not. My foundation could have millions of dollars and it doesn't, because I have a really hard time structuring myself and setting the steps and following through. If somebody says, show up here at 10 o'clock, okay. And they give me a list, I'll do all the things on the list. I'm very good at that. I have a very hard time setting my own schedule and creating my own list.
We love who you are. So
yeah, well, we love who you are too. So I look at us, this is my big giant Marty Barb ego talking, but I look at you and I sometimes as such a stabilizing force of that whole BU crew and that whole program, because we had such a big impact on it. Everyone that ran really well and all left their impact in school records and good races and all of that. But I don't know, us being the All-Americans, it's just not lost on me sometimes how tender our backgrounds were, and just coming into, sure, we'll go to BU. Why not? Just all of it. It's a part of my story that I really like. Marty, thank you for being willing to come on and do this. I think. Oh
my God. I'm so honored to be on your podcast. Are you kidding me?
So everybody, that's Marty Shea, my very first ever best running friend and best running rival and best running enemy. She was all those things at one point or another, both of us. As always, be good to yourself, reconnect with old friends, let them know how you feel about them. Tell them that you love them. Be good to someone else. Always be good to someone else. And as always, have a good day, everybody.
Hey, thanks for listening and supporting the podcast. Feel free to leave a review and share my stories with your friends. Please reach out with your own stories, as I love connecting with my listeners. If you would like to get to know Molly, head over to mollybfoundation.org to see what she is all about. If you want to see what I'm up to next, you can find me on Instagram at barb_444, on Facebook as Barb Higgins, and at my website, 1000tinysteps.com. And while you're there, sign up for my newsletter, a weekly way to find out what's up in the life of Barb Higgins.